Hello, everyone. This is Marita, one who catches lightning, with the Path of Ish podcast, Walking with Our Shadow, where we share ancient indigenous teachings of remembrance, all so we can walk and learn how to walk a path of radical self-love. So I'm super excited today for another opportunity to sit in the circle, to be in community, to have a moment, to have a discussion, and to witness someone on their journey. Today, we're talking to Amber Keys as we witness them on their journey of being part of humanity, of being part of a design and the spark of imagination, and how they live their truth. So welcome, Amber. How are you?
Hello, I am so wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
We're super excited, Amber, to get to know you a little bit better. So why don't you give us a little version of the creation story that comes to mind that you want to share with us today?
Yes, thank you so much. So fun, this idea of creation story. I think I'm going to start at the end with where I am this present moment. I am a business success mentor and human design expert. I really got into entrepreneurship personally to have freedom and flexibility in my life, to create a sense of community and peace for my son. As we were talking before we recorded, I grew up in Michigan, spent so much time in peace and solitude as a child, probably more than I should have been alone. When I think about my childhood, I think about how spacious and quiet it was, and how much time I had to really cultivate a relationship with myself, with my community. As a mother, I had this sort of moment recognizing that somewhere along the way, I had abandoned everything that was important to me on some levels. I think that having children can really do that for you, right? It can shuffle your priorities, and living a fast-paced life, working in the nonprofit industrial complex, working in the Fortune 500 world. I realized it was a life that I didn't want to be living. I had pursued so many achievements. Like, by the time I was even 25 years old, I used to say, like, I've lived more life in 25 years than most people would probably live in a lifetime. Like, I was relentless in my pursuit of worldly achievements, and becoming a mom really helped to reorient me. And it gave me this sort of wake up moment where I realized that every moment of my life at that point was a distraction. It was in service to someone or something else. It was a form of exploitation. It's taken me about 9 years to get to where I am now. But I would say the last 9 years, I would say I've been a spiritual seeker my whole life. But the last 9 years in particular, becoming a mother, have given me new reason to reconnect back into my roots, into my own sense of self, my own divine essence.
Beautiful. What a journey to be on, the reclamation of your divine essence. So, if I remember correctly, you are someone who, you kind of spoke about it a little bit, you have a keen awareness of systems. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of and your relationship to systems, and then how you like to then be informed about them to change them?
Yeah, interestingly, so I am certainly a macro person. When I studied social work, I studied what's called macro social work, which is in my area of specialty was community and social systems. So specifically, it's interesting. I can walk into a space and become aware very quickly of who holds the power and influence, who doesn't hold the power and influence, what that means for those people who don't have power and influence, how to help bridge the gaps and coordinate resources. And it's funny because it's kind of ruined me in a way to where I can't, I have to be the asshole at the table who's always like, but who's not sitting at the table? And who doesn't have a voice here? And how do we get them to the table, right? And how do we say, uphold our values? I worked for a chamber of commerce. And so I just have always been the person who understands, right? The who's who and how we develop strategic relationships and learn how to play the game in a way that is subversive, right? Where we know the system is there, we know that it's oppressive, and we participate in it insofar as to shift it from the inside out.
Mm.
And so that's how I view, on a larger scale, even in my life, the work that I do is being a part of transforming communities into spaces of alignment, spaces of inclusion, right? Spaces of true inclusion, not just like DEI inclusion, right? But like true inclusion. That's my passion. That's what I love to do.
And within those spaces of true inclusion, you also work with individuals about their true inclusion of self. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Take that macro to a micro level.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. I used to focus so heavily on, I was a community organizer. I did a lot of work on the macro level, and I raged against the machine for a long number of years. And it's interesting, right? Because even in my creation story, having a child almost shifted that for me, where I was like, oh, what if the path to changing the system was changing one individual human at a time? What if the revolution that I am here to support is the revolution of human consciousness? And yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head. In order to be able to create spaces of inclusion, we first need to develop that relationship to ourselves. We need to have that self-inclusion, right? That self-acceptance. And what I love about human design is, for me, it helps bring that grace and that self-acceptance to the individual that I work with to tell the story. I know that you talk about with the 3 breaths, right? The mind, the body, and the essence. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I feel like I work in those 3 realms as well. In human design, those are sort of the aspects of self that are present, which is not surprising because human design is based on a number of sacred systems. When I work with an individual, I think so much of the work that I'm doing is helping them to rewrite their story from a lens of empowerment and inclusion.
Beautiful. And so tell us a little bit more about your relationship of human design. I know you didn't go to a 3-hour workshop and become certified. I know that you've been walking this path for a long time. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your relationship to human design and how that's woven a path for you?
Yeah, I was introduced to human design in 2014. Prior to that, from a very young age, I was deeply spiritual. We had, being in Michigan, family friends who they were native, and so we would do meditation circles and things like that. And I would take friends and I was just learning, right, about all of the spiritual systems that there were. I think I've always been really fascinated, and I was actually raised Catholic and could not find Jesus the revolutionary in the Jesus that they preached about in the Catholic Church. So there was a lot of, for me, seeking. I remember when I was in high school, I went to Catholic high school, coming out to my religion teacher and saying, I'm agnostic, and like getting a detention for saying that. In all of my seeking, I studied the human energy field. I became a Reiki master. I practiced Vipassana meditation. I really was a very like buffet style spiritualist, if you will, like trying to find the thing. And for me, being introduced to human design was really, what I loved about it was that it synthesized some of the systems that I was already familiar with. And it also supported all of the work that I'd done with the human energy field, and everything that I knew about systems and structures, and everything that I knew about trauma and conditioning, and everything that I always knew to be true about coming home to the truth of who we are. It was almost like like I had been collecting puzzle pieces throughout the years. And then coming to human design was like that moment where like all of a sudden it clicks and everything comes together. And so what was really incredible about coming to human design, I was introduced when my son was a baby. Mm-hmm. I may not have put as much effort into understanding the system of human design if I did not have an infant child who was animating before my eyes according to his design. And that, for me, seeing an example of who we are or who we were born to be before the world got to us and told us, well, you're going to be this, and you need to look like this and dress like this, and this is going to be your career, and you can't, right? You're going to have a career, and then you can do art or music or whatever, right? All of these shoulds and all of these boxes and all of these pressures that we put on children from a very young age. My son hasn't really been raised. He's been raised with a mother who really understands the essence of who he was born to be. And so I think that's what keeps me coming back and just living and loving on human design, because for every human who sits in front of me, I want to bring them back to that part of themselves, right? Before the world got a hold of them and told them they weren't good enough, or they weren't smart enough, or they were too loud or too bossy.
I love it. From the traditions I come from one of the teachings, it's, it talks about how we're all born amnesiacs. Mm-hmm. So most of our life, it started really raining as we're talking about this. So talk about clearing some energy. Mm-hmm. That whole idea of that our life journey is to remember, to decondition ourselves, and to return back, like you said, almost like a primal possibility. That's what I want to call it. Mm-hmm. The possibility of, if we connect to our primal nature, our creatureness, instead of, condition ourselves to, as you said, look a certain way, do a certain thing, play the part. And so I love that that's how you're kind of speaking about human design, because it does, as you said, mimic and come from a lot of sacred traditions in that journey. Side note, I'm just curious because I can tell you grew up by a river by the way that you talk. What was the name of your river?
The Chippewa River.
Ah, beautiful. It definitely runs through you. So I love speaking to people who grew up near bodies of water because when they form relationship to it, you can feel it in their beingness and the rhythm of how they move and talk and explore. And what a blessing to have that river as one of your teachers. Do you go back and visit your friend?
It's funny. My dad moved across the state when I was 22 years old. And I try, it's so funny because I call it a pilgrimage. Like once a year, I have to go back. And it's always also, it's interesting that you say that because it's always around this time of the year because we were just always in the water in the summer. We're always, and the Chippewa is like, it's a really shallow river. Like you can take a lawn chair and go sit, and we used to just sit for hours and watch the water go by. And so, yeah, I do a pilgrimage. I make it back up about once a year. This year, my son, I think, is going to be old enough to come. He's never gone tubing. But that's a really beautiful reflection. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, you were in relationship to the medicine that it taught you and have been able to weave it. So it's always good to be able to see that. So as we talk about weaving, and kind of meandering in the Chippewa River, being able to look at how water moves, how life moves, shallow river that provides us safety to a certain degree. As we continue to wander, I'm wondering about, you speak about human design in a way that I don't think that many people in social media speak about it, the way that they've oversimplified it to make it accessible. There's a depth and meandering to your river of conversation. And I just wanted to talk about, what do you see or perceive dangers of simplifying systems in a way to quote unquote make them accessible or make them fast for people?
I'm laughing because this is something that I'm doing a lot of inner work. I feel like I have stood sort of combating what I call the Instagram hotties or like the Pinterest experts, right? When it comes to human design. I think what's interesting about human design is what people forget or what people don't even know, right? When people come to these systems and they're like, I could make a lot of money brokering this information to people because people will pay for it because it's complex and they don't understand it, right? But when you yourself have not taken the time to enter into the system, in human design, they say it takes 7 years to decondition fully. 7 years of daily practice, of contemplation. Human design there's a subtlety, right? There's a subtlety, and it's about, now that we're talking about rivers too, like I always say this, it's about allowing it to wash over you, right? For the subtlety to drift into your awareness, right? And so that is something that only someone who really approaches it with the reverence that it deserves can really understand. So what happens when you have these sort of weekend workshop warrior people, or you have these people who read a human design book or quote unquote studied it through Google, human design, words are so very limiting, right? Human design uses words in a very, very literal way, where 9 times out of 10, the word as you read it, it's almost like reading Shakespeare, right? If you're reading Old English, it doesn't hit the same way, right? You have to take time to really break it down and understand, okay, what does this mean? So when you look at the archetypal energies, the names of these energies in human design, there's the thing that you think it is, which is, I don't like to use the word wrong. It's incorrect. It's not the truth, right? And then there's the subtlety that becomes more and more and more clear over time as to what that looks like. So human design is a system to be held over a long period of time, to be worked with, to be initiated by, to be transformed, right, with this contemplative reverence, right? Never accepting the truth of the word as you read it. And I think that's where it gets lost, right? People see very specific words and they think it means, like, the word wait makes me crazy, because then people are like, I'm going to go sit on the couch now and just wait. That's not what we do when we're trusting that that which is intended for us will come into us, right? Waiting and trusting are two totally different words. The word that you would read is wait, for example, right? But the way that it actually looks and feels when the rubber meets the road is a state of surrender, right? And so the difference between waiting in line and surrendering the need to control are two totally different things. And those things get lost in translation. And so then what you have is these people who are regurgitating words, and the ideas that those words call up, the images that those words call up, are not accurate. And so it only serves to turn people even further away from the truth, which is a disservice to humanity.
I love the example that you used, waiting, because I know that I've not surrendered being in line sometimes, in a long line.
Right.
So I think that's a beautiful imagery to use. And when you were talking about that, I don't know if you've read any of Henry Nouwen. He's definitely a Catholic mystic that I love, and he has this book out there. I always forget what it's called, but one of the chapters, it talks about waiting is living now, and how it's really, like you said, it's about being present.
Yeah.
It's about surrendering. It's being part of the all in that moment. And that means you have to truly look at what part of it is you. What part of are you trying to control? What part are you, manifesting or making present? And what are you also not listening to? I'd love to explore, because I love exploring words in this podcast, but I'd love to, stay playful and curious, as we always do here. What is a word that you see a lot of people kind of clinging to, specifically in human design, that we could kind of delve into and swim around a little bit more to unpack it? I have an idea of a word that I'd like to play with, but why don't you bring one to the table?
Okay. Ooh. I want to know what your word is. I think the word that I would choose, because I talk about this often, the signature energy of a projector is, the word is success.
Oh, okay. This is going to be a good one. I want to listen to this.
Okay. Do you want to say your word, or should we just go right into
the other one that I hear a lot, right, this is kind of tied, is like manifester, like that idea of manifestation.
Ooh, yes.
So I'd love to hear
I love that.
your kind of meandering, all-inclusive journey with these words of success and manifestation.
Yes. Manifester I love that one too. Okay, let me start with success. Okay, so, well, let me just ask you, when I say success, what images come to mind?
You know, since you're asking me today and not yesterday or the day before, right? Because I always love to challenge them. Today, I'm really sitting in that space of, success is the ability to be presently myself, to honor
Mm.
who I am, who I have been, and who I'm becoming, not as an illusion of me controlling things, but being in relationship to the all. And so I think for me, success is not something outward. It's that feeling of, for me, I use imagery as that feeling of swimming in the ocean, of slipping
Mm.
through the water and being part of something bigger than myself, and yet feeling completely at home. So for me today, since I've been doing a lot of work around this, that's where I want to sit with this.
Mm.
How about you?
I love what you shared. I also happen to know your human design, so it's funny, right? Success for me also. I'm a generator in human design. My version of success is very similar. It's feeling deeply, deeply satisfied. And when I
Mm.
use that word, right, for me, satisfaction is staying present to this moment, being present, right, pouring myself into the work that I do and having an impact and loving on my people. The only thing I've ever really wanted is just to feel deeply personally fulfilled, to feel like I don't have any ethical qualms with myself. But when I have, so it's funny, right? Because when you say success, though, usually people think, I'm a millionaire. I've got a
Mhm.
Range Rover in the driveway. I've got a purse. I'm
Mhm.
going, I'm jet setting to Bali or to Paris or to wherever, right? We have these images of like worldly success. And what's really
Mhm.
interesting is, if we were to define it in terms of human design for a projector, because that's the type,
Mhm.
success is using your energy with the right people at the right time in the right place.
Mm.
And the reason it's success is that when you're able to do that as a projector, if you are not wasting your precious life force energy trying to guide and direct people who don't want to hear from you, right? When you use your energy for the people who see and recognize and honor who you are, that you are always going to be cared for. That is success, right?
Mm.
That the money will flow. The money is a moot point. The idea, the pictures that we call up, right? So I have had clients who just want to fast forward to the part literally where they're living in a mansion. And there are some gates that are like celebrity, it can be a part of it, like being kind of a big deal. But in human design, the name of the game is, am I using my energy for the thing I was put on this earth to do? Am I sharing my light with the people who need to see it? And if I am, then I will always be successful.
Mm. So much more depth to that, I feel that many people come to human design or other systems, right? And they want like
Right.
life hacks, like the quick, easy, I want it now. And, it's funny because I was having a conversation with my wife prior to this. And I said, look, we're dealing with generations of a certain age that have been trained their whole life to fill out a Scantron and have a quick response and not have critical thinking and have been trained to, what success means, have been trained to how fast something should be, right? Because we
Mhm.
keep making this world faster. And this conversation that we're having is not a shallow conversation. It's a long, long river of being able to, sit in that river and have it affect you as much as you affect it. And so I love that we're in the traditions that I come from, it's about being in relationship, and what are the relationships that you're building. And a lot of that
Mhm.
is what we're doing here is what are these relationships with words that we apply to systems that limit us. So I'd love for you to walk us through manifester or manifesting, because again, there's this idea of, hey, you type in this number that you see reoccurring and there you go. There's $1,000,000 in your inbox.
Mhm.
Hasn't happened to me. So
Yes. I love that. And it is so funny, right? That words can be so limiting. Even systems can be so limiting. I tell people, there are people who in the human design world are, I think this is just what humans do when they get together and money's involved and power, right? It becomes this dogma,
mm-hmm.
right? Where it no longer matters if the transformation or the transmission is viable. I do want to come back also to what you shared about, like, I think we live in this world where, in a globalized world where everything's at your fingertips. And I experienced this with my son, right? It's so hard to teach modern children the art of really slowing down and listening to the subtlety of the wind blowing through the trees and learning to recognize the sound of different birds or animals. And from everything that I've ever done, the answer is never moving faster. The answer is always slowing down and allowing it, right? Allowing whatever is troubling you, the situation, right? Whatever problem has come up, right? To sit and be present with it in that moment. And it's really hard, I think, with children who've grown up with everything at their fingertips to help them to understand, right? And you can't just Google something and then the wisdom washes over you and you're like healed forever. Like I read I was a manifester. Where's my $1,000,000? Exactly, right? So, and it's interesting the relationship that people have to this word, because some people will come to human design and they have what I call type envy, where they see that manifester as a type and they're like, but no, I'm a manifester too. I'm a very powerful manifester. I found $5 in the fence in my yard yesterday or whatever. Shit just always comes to me, which is great. Again, I think this is one of those, right, limitations. We as humans in human design, there's a center called the G center, and it's what would constitute the front portion of the heart chakra. And it's where our spark of divinity incarnates, our soul sits in our body. And in human design, it's called the magnetic monopole. And what's really beautiful and magnificent about this is that in earthly terms, when we think in terms of like manifesting, like I think of a thing and it comes to me, or right, whatever images are called up, we are one-way magnets attracting everything that we need in this lifetime to us. But it is simply our job, right? Kind of like you said, we're born amnesiacs, like to remember that piece of it, that it's all already there. And when we talk in terms of manifester as a type, it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they can manifest or how much money or what comes to them. It really is more the way that their energy moves. But it is something where we get a lot of type envy. Everybody wants to be a manifester because they think it will make them successful, which is the projector word, right? And it's funny because, number one, by incarnating into a body on this earth, you are worthy of every last thing that you could possibly ever need. And we get so lost in the day to day and what we think it should look like and how it should come that we impact, right? We put filters over that magnet to stop it from coming. So the other interesting thing is the generator type. They also, it's really interesting, they have a sacral center that sort of pulses into the environment and is sort of pulling data in to respond to. So if you're thinking in terms of how we look at this idea of manifestation, of pulling things into you, that would actually be a generator type who would be more capable of that than a manifester type who is here to impact and initiate and put things out into the world.
Wow, I'm loving this deep conversation of the right to be. One of the things that I've noticed in the circles when people come into my Indigenous circles that is probably the hardest part of the bridge to even like start on or to even find where it is that the right to be is very different. You know, in Western culture and society, you earn your right to be by what you do, right? By being productive. Whilst in Indigenous circles and teachings, your right to be is because you are part of existence.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's also being able to sit with, my existence and my sovereignty is as important as that ant or that amoeba or that mountain. And the way that you're talking about the opportunity of coming into this planet, coming into these bodies, is really that right to be. And that is not really taught many people that I have met in Western society. So I'm loving the circle that you are creating and supporting it with this deep relationship to nature, deep relationship to many systems of spirituality and being able to weave them together. And I just want to honor that, as I would say, medicine, being yourself. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to also kind of, as we're speaking, I wanted to, since we're talking about speed, right? And information,
Mm-hmm.
I remember this quote from Winston Churchill that says, "A lie gets halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to get its pants on." And it's just like, if we also look at that as information and speed, what's going to be the fastest? The fastest that will chase after or get will be the misinformation, what you have been trained that fits into the system. It won't be that truth that's in your body, that's the remembering. So I just thought to add it, adds kind of a little, well, of course, why are we looking for that fast fix if a lie gets halfway around the world before truth puts on its pants?
And I think that these systems, right, that we're indoctrinated in, that we're born into, right, they require that we don't ask questions, that we don't tune into our body to check and see, right? Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
That we are so ready to believe the lie that's halfway around the world without asking, what's the context of this? Or what else could be true here? Or, I don't know, what data do you have to back that up? So, yeah, I think it's deeply beautiful. I think about being able to uncover the truth, right? What exists as truth for me or truth for you, right? And knowing that our truths don't always have to align or be the same, right? But even being empowered enough to ask the question, is it true for me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would love, Amber, if you want to go down this journey with me, of course, you can say no, but we talk a lot about in this circle again about speed and slowing down, and slowing down means different things to everyone. And when I talk to a lot of people, there's just so much resistance, right? That slowing down means that they won't be supported or there's lack to it. And so I'm wondering, because you're so a beautiful weaver and a questioner of things, what is a word, or how can we redefine slowing down in this context of exploration of self as it relates to human design?
Oh, as it relates to human design, well, human design is, if you come to actually learn how to live the wisdom of human design, it is a path back to your primal wisdom. It's a path back to your body. In human design, your decision-making authority, right? Your intuition, your guide, if you will, right, is your body. It is never, ever your thinking mind. And I think that's something that, I encounter it a lot too, where people, they're not willing to drop into their body. And if we look at the way that so many of us are conditioned to hate our bodies, or to be at war with our bodies, or to be in a state of perpetual movement, I think therein lies the challenge. And it's hard to even understand sometimes. I feel very fortunate. I always, given the way that I grew up where I did have a lot of alone time, I think it has predisposed me to slow down. It has predisposed me to notice the subtlety of the river in front of me, the pond, how the turtles move. And it's something that it almost reminds me, I don't know if this is going to be a good analogy or not, but this is the one I always use. Like, if you are like a smoker, for example, and you stop smoking, and then you're like, holy cow, I didn't realize that I felt tired, that I felt inflammation in my body, or whatever it is that you felt, right? If you're doing something where you're consistently, maybe poisoning your body in a way, and then you stop doing it, there's this period where it takes so long for you to even begin to recognize that you're like, oh, this is what it means to smell beautiful smells, or this is what it means to be able to breathe clean air, where we almost, it's one of those things where like you can't know what you're missing until you get enough time to slow down. And I think that hopefully in the work that I do, that's a part of what I hope to leave with the folks that I work with, is the path to speeding up or fast forwarding or quantum leaping, if you will, is actually slowing down and honoring your body.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through that slowly. Amber, why don't you tell us and how people can work with you, how to find you, and any fun projects you have coming up where people can join your circles.
Yeah, so I am right now primarily in the Facebook realm. I have a Facebook group. It's called Your Life, Your Biz, Your Way with Human Design. It's the 2-year anniversary of this particular iteration of the work that I'm doing, of my transition into online work. So I'm doing in the month of July, we've got Fundamentals of Human Design, and then I'm doing 2 Human Design Ask Me Anything. So I'm really, really passionate about teaching human design in the way that I come to know it, or I have come to know it. So if there's anyone out there interested in learning, that's always a choice. And for those who are ready to start taking steps in the direction of living according to their design, I have a 16-week sort of human design playground coming up called Embody Academy, where the sole purpose of that program is to deepen in to ourselves and to begin to express and shine that divine light, to honor the truth of the signals that our body is giving us in the moment, and to start creating a life that, again, is truly, when I say success, right, truly successful. That's truly meaningful, that's satisfying, right, that's peaceful. So that's starting in August. And for more information on that, folks can visit my website, www.amberkeys.com.
Beautiful, Amber. And, I've had the honor of sitting with you and walking through my human design. And I totally recommend Amber. And I'm a very, very picky person. So I hope that you get an opportunity to sit with them. And thank you, Amber, for taking this time to reintroduce, human design. And I truly feel that today, I'm walking away, and I hope others are walking away with this invitation that human design is an invitation to embody our humanity and our divinity in a way where we are feeling the expression of our being. So thank you, Amber, for that invitation to remember, to reset, and to believe. Shade. Once again, it is with deepest gratitude that I bow to you for joining me on this podcast, this episode, this circle, this plática, this meditation, this remembering. I hope that you have stayed curious. I hope to see you in the circle again next week. So make sure that you like or follow. Until then, may you be blessed with abundance of peace and radical self-love.